Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to Live Prep. Now, under the human physiology, we are starting with a chapter that is called as breathing and exchange of gases. So, here, before directly starting with this particular chapter, I wanted to tell you a few important things. So, first, let us complete that, then we can go with the chapter. The first and foremost thing is what is the weightage for entire human physiology? This is the first important point you need to understand. In the human physiology, as per the new NCERT, they are giving actually 6 chapters. Yes or no? 6 chapters are there. What is the regular weightage of this? What is the regular weightage? For each chapter, the number of questions they are asking in the NEET examination is 2 questions only. The average weightage is 2 questions only. That means the weightage of these chapters is not too high. Please understand this. If you are talking about the class 12th chapters like principles of inheritance and variation, molecular basis of inheritance, biotechnology, yes or no, these are all very high weightage chapters. And after that, health and diseases will come. And in the class 11 chapters, cell, the unit of life, biomolecules, animal kingdom. So these are having high weightage. And after that, in the next category, so human reproduction chapter will come, cell cycle, cell division will come. So in this way, and in the botany part also, you can talk about that plant kingdom, morphology, anatomy. Likewise, they will come. And after that, now these all the chapters of human physiology will come. The average weightage for each chapter is just 2 questions only. Please understand this. That means, so these chapters are having very less than average weightage. So in my opinion, it is having the weightage less than average. But the major problem here is this chapter, since it is about the human physiology, we are more curious and more interested towards these chapters. So that's there actually the problem will come. Students are also more interested regarding these chapters. And what generally the teachers will do, they will spend more time on these chapters. But actually the weightage is not that much. Please understand this. And here generally what the major mistake done by the teachers is, see what is the syllabus of our NEET examination. So just go through it. For that particular one, to make the students understand the content very easy, yes, you can go with some important points, but ultimately it is to make you people understand the NCERT sentences. That's it. For that, for any teacher, there will be some liberty will be there, so that small percentage they can go little bit beyond NCERT, but ultimately it is to make you understand all this content. So up to that it is okay. But the problem is majority of the teachers, they are teaching some content that is not needed for NEET examination, and they are deviating too much. They are deviating too much. This is another problem. And please remember, my suggestion to the students is, please remember we are studying only class 11th and 12th. That's it. We are not doing MBBS here. We are not doing MBBS or BDS or something here. Please understand this. We are studying only class 11th and class 12th. So for this class 11th and class 12th, and also to clear that NEET examination, what is the content that is required? Only that much is enough. If you want to study something extra, that is your headache, but ultimately please remember, so that is not needed for NEET examination. Please remember this. So in this way, first as a student, first you should know what to study for NEET examination. And obviously as a teacher, I should know what is the content I need to teach for the NEET examination. So please remember here, and that too, there is one more problem is there. The problem is, see NCERT. So NCERT is giving some syllabus, whereas different state boards, they are giving different syllabus. Anyhow, the basic information 80 to 90% will be common for all of them. But for some of the contents in different boards, so they are giving different other content. So now the thing is, please remember, so in our country, so there are so many boards are there, yes or no? And individually each state is having their own boards, and along with this, so at the central level, so we are having this NCERT, yes or no? So CBSE board is there. So when these many syllabuses are there, okay, so then which one we need to follow? Please remember for the NEET examination, I am not saying that only NCERT is required, but 99.9% they are following the NCERT content. So that is the reason why my suggestion is simply focus on NCERT content. Simply focus on NCERT content. Suppose you have enrolled in 11th and 12th class for your respective boards, state boards. So then what happens is, in those state board books, you may find some extra content and you may feel that we are not covering that content here. So directly I am telling you, for the NEET examination, you just simply follow the NCERT textbook content. That much is enough. If you understand each and every word, each and every sentence and its meaning, okay, and with, if possible, interlinking with some other chapters, that much is enough to crack NEET examination, and you can easily get 360 out of 360. Is it clear? So in this way, this is what I wanted to tell you. So first thing we need to understand from this particular human physiology chapter is weightage is little bit less. So that's why unnecessarily we don't need to spend much time on these chapters. This is what my conclusion is. The thing is, what is the syllabus? What is the content we need? At least that content we will do it very perfectly, very perfectly. Okay. So in this way, so we are going with this particular chapters. Clear? And before starting with the main content, there is one more request from my side is, majority of the teachers, they are telling the students that it is not that much difficult. That is correct. But there itself, they are saying that you can easily by heart the content. So many teachers are telling to the students that to by heart the content. Please remember, if you are by hearting the content, it is difficult to remember for longer duration. You may remember for a few days or few weeks, but later on you will definitely forget about it. Please remember, any chapter will have some logical point in that. Okay. So definitely, though it is biology, 80% will be concept based. 80% will be concept based. My suggestion is, try to understand the concept properly. Once you understood the concept properly, what is the content you need to remember? There will be some examples. There will be some examples, like animals examples will be there, or some tissues locations will be there, or else suppose in this particular chapter there will be some partial pressure values will be there. Slowly we will study all those things. Some numbers will be there. So definitely those numbers, those examples, locations, yes, that particular content that you need to anyhow by heart it. But the original basic concept, don't try to by heart it. Don't try to by heart the concept. Try to understand the concept so that it will be very easy. Even though they are making the question little bit tricky, still you can easily solve it because you know the concept. Suppose you are by hearting the content. Suppose they are changing the wording of the sentence, still you will make the mistake. So these are the problems that are associated with human physiology chapter. So I hope you understood what I am trying to tell you. And now, without wasting the time, now we will start with this particular chapter that is called as breathing and exchange of gases. Clear? And here we are going with this particular breathing and exchange of gases. What is the meaning of this particular chapter? If you know the meaning of this, then you can understand what exactly we will study in this particular chapter. Then you can interlink with various other chapters. The chapter is breathing and exchange of gases. Breathing and exchange of gases. Okay. So anyhow, in the NCERT also, in the first paragraph they have given. So why do we breathe? How we are actually doing the breathing this? What is the exact mechanism underlying this? All the things we will study here. But the thing is, why? This is most important now. Why should we breathe? Why should we breathe? What actually happening in this breathing here? So actually in the breathing, what we are doing, we are taking the atmospheric air through the nostrils, through the nose into our lungs. Yes or no? In the breathing, what actually we are doing? We are taking the atmospheric air into our lungs. And then whatever the air that is present in the lungs, again we are releasing into the atmosphere. This is what, in simple, the breathing is this much. Taking the atmospheric air into the lungs and releasing the air present in the lungs into the atmosphere. This particular process is called as breathing in simple. Clear? And now what we are saying here, suppose let us take the human here. So here this is the respiratory tract, and finally let us draw the lungs like this. Okay, suppose these are the two lungs. See, please remember, here I am drawing the rough diagrams only. I am not drawing the neatly labeled diagrams. Please understand, all the diagrams will be rough diagrams only. You will understand the concept. So I don't want to spend more time on the diagrams. You can easily understand those. So wherever it is required, directly I will show you the diagram also. So no problem. So understand this. What we are saying that air is entering into the lungs, and then air from the lungs is released out into the atmosphere. This is the atmosphere, and these two are the lungs. This is one lung, this is the other lung. Please observe carefully here. What actually happening here? So now let us recollect some other content. Then I will come back to this. What is the content already we studied in the plant physiology? Studied or will be studying, whatever it is. So in the plant physiology, there is a chapter called as respiration. There is a chapter called as respiration. There is a chapter called as respiration. Now many students are having the confusion here. So respiration, breathing, are they same or not? Respiration and breathing, are they same or not? In simple, if you are observing, both of them are same only. But in specific, if you are observing, there is a minute difference. So what are these differences? Slowly you will understand, so don't worry. So in the respiration in higher plants chapter of plant physiology, there we studied about some process called as glycolysis. In the glycolysis, what happens here? Glucose is broken down into pyruvic acid, is converted into pyruvic acid. Yes or no? And in the case of animals like human, if you are talking, so we are aerobic organisms. Yes or no? So we are using the oxygen. So in presence of oxygen, what happens? What is the ultimate pathway that we are observing? From the pyruvic acid, acetyl coenzyme A is produced. Acetyl coenzyme A is produced, and again it is involved in a cycle. This cycle is called as Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle. Yes or no? Krebs cycle. In the Krebs cycle, there is an important point. What is the point here? In the Krebs cycle, CO2, carbon dioxide, is released. In the Krebs cycle, CO2 is released. Okay, this is how the Krebs cycle is occurring. And here what we are saying, in this glycolysis, in this Krebs cycle, so in all these cases, we are observing the formation of NADH plus H plus and also FADH2. Anyhow, FADH2 is produced only in the Krebs cycle, but NADH plus H plus is produced in both Krebs cycle and also glycolysis. In both the case, it is produced. And now what happens here? Now these two will enter into electron transport chain or electron transport system. Yes or no? So in the inner mitochondrial membrane, there are some different types of proteins that are involving in this particular sequence of reactions. Combinedly, it is called as electron transport chain or electron transport system. So in this electron transport system, what is the ultimate thing that is happening here? Oxygen is used. Oxygen is used so that H plus ions and oxygen combinedly they will ultimately form metabolic water. This water that is formed inside the body due to this particular reaction is called as metabolic water. Metabolic water is produced. And here during this process, what happens? During the electron transport chain, what happens? Across the inner membrane, H plus ions are passing. Yes or no? Suppose this is the inner membrane. Across the inner membrane, these H plus ions are passing. From where to where? From intermitochondrial space between the two membranes of the mitochondria. So there is a space. This is called as intermembranal space or perimitochondrial space. Intermembranal space or perimitochondrial space. Anything you can say. From there, it is entering into the matrix. From there, H plus ions are entering into the matrix. So that now what happens? Here, they are passing through F0, F1 particles. F0, F1 particles. And here what happens? ADP plus PI is converted to ATP. Since H plus is moving from high concentration to low concentration, it is releasing some energy, and that energy is used to attach phosphoric acid to ADP so that it is converted into ATP, and this is called as energy currency of the cell. In this way, from the food material like glucose, the energy is produced. So not only glucose, so there are some interlinking pathways. So many interlinking pathways are there. In this way, carbohydrates also can give energy, proteins also can give energy, even fats also can give the energy. So in this way, these are the various food materials that can provide energy. Yes or no? This is what the thing we are studying with respect to the glucose molecule. Understood or not? Now here, why we are studying about that particular content in this particular chapter? So here you need to observe carefully. So in these particular things, where these reactions are occurring? Inside the cells. Inside the cells, these reactions are occurring. In all the cells, these reactions are occurring. That means for all the cells, oxygen is required. This is what the concluding point. Come to the concluding point. These are the reactions occurring in all the cells. Because in all the cells, energy should be produced. So that's why in all the cells, these reactions are occurring. So that means, so during this electron transport chain, oxygen is utilized. So from where this oxygen is supplied? Definitely it should be taken from the atmosphere. So in the case of human, what we are doing? We are taking this oxygen from the atmosphere into the lungs first. So from the lungs, it will go into the blood circulation, and through the blood circulation, it will be supplied to the all the body cells. So in this way, body cells will take this oxygen and then they are using in this particular reaction. Very good. Next one, in all the cells, this breakdown pathway is taking place. This Krebs cycle is occurring in the aerobic conditions, yes or no? So that here CO2 is released. CO2 is released and here oxygen is used. Oxygen is used. So in this way, the overall conclusion is, so to get the energy from these types of different types of food materials, ultimately oxygen is required, and during this particular process CO2 is released. So how we have developed this, why we have developed this particular breathing system here, respiratory system here, why we are developing this one? Because since our cells need the oxygen, this oxygen should be supplied, and during the reaction CO2 is produced. This produced CO2 should be released outside the body. So in this way, during inspiration, now come to this particular one. So here I am using the green line here. In the green line, what is happening here? Air from the atmosphere, So now this is having oxygen rich. Yes, sir. Now between oxygen and CO2, if you are talking, atmosphere is rich in oxygen. It is having more oxygen. So this oxygen is taken into the lungs. So once oxygen is coming into the lungs, so now here what happens? Blood supply will be there. From the lungs, it will go into the blood circulation. And now this blood circulation, now initially it will go to the heart. It will go to the heart, and then from this heart, now it will be supplied to the body parts. It will be supplied to all the body parts. Now these body parts, they will use the oxygen and then they are releasing CO2. And this released CO2, once again it will come to the heart, and then here it is coming to the lungs. At the lungs, what happens? From this blood, CO2 is released into lungs. And now this released CO2 and this released CO2 from the lungs is released outside the body. Yes or no? This is what the overall idea of breathing process. So in the breathing process, generally what we are saying, this first step we are saying. So atmospheric air, that means oxygen rich atmospheric air is taken into the lungs, and within the alveoli, within this lungs, what happens? Don't worry about the term alveoli. Within the lungs, more CO2 is coming. From where? From this blood, it is coming into the lungs. And this CO2 rich uh, CO2 rich gas or the air that is present in the lungs is released into the atmosphere. This is what the general idea. So in this way, for the oxidation of the food substances, oxygen is required, and that oxygen is supplied through this breathing process. And during the oxidation of the food substances, CO2 is released. That CO2 is coming ultimately to the lungs, and from the lungs it is released into the atmosphere. This is what the overall process of the breathing here. So here we are talking about breathing means only this particular step we are talking. Breathing means what? Atmospheric air is going into lungs, and from the lungs, now the CO2 rich air is coming into the atmosphere. This particular step is called breathing. Understood or not? So in this way, in this breathing, actually two steps are there. What is the first one? Taking the atmospheric air into the lungs. So taking atmospheric air into the lungs. So within this breathing, actually two things are there. Taking atmospheric air into the lungs is called as inspiration. Yes or no? Next one. CO2 rich alveolar air or air present in the lungs is released outside the body, that is called as expiration. So in this way, within this breathing, two steps are present. One is inspiration, other one is expiration. So these are the two things that we need to study. Fine. So this is what we are talking about, breathing. Then what is this exchange of gases? Where the exchange is taking place? You need to observe carefully here. So here what we are saying, so regarding this exchange, let us see this. Suppose, so ultimately it is coming into the lungs. Ultimately it is coming into the lungs. Okay. Suppose it is like this. So what we are saying here, breathing means up to this. Breathing means up to this. That means air is entering into the lungs, and from the lungs air is released outside into the atmosphere. Up to this it is breathing. But where this exchange of gas is taking place, now you need to observe carefully here. Suppose there is a heart here. Don't worry about the heart. So these things I will tell you slowly. Since I wanted to tell you what is this breathing and exchange of gases, I am telling like this. See here, from the lungs, air is coming to this heart, and from the heart now it is supplied to body parts, all the body parts. Blood circulation is carrying these gases to the body parts. That means what happens? From the lungs, oxygen is coming to this heart, and now through this blood, now it is going to this body part. So in this way, now it is entering into the body part. So in this way, body parts means what? Cells are present, and these cells will take this particular oxygen, and then what happens? And these cells, they are releasing CO2. Let me use a different color. So they are releasing the CO2, and this released CO2, it will reach the heart again, and from the heart again it is going to the lungs. Yes or no? And in this way it is happening. So here what exactly happening here? Observe carefully. At the lungs what happens here? Oxygen is entering into the blood, and the CO2 from the blood is going into the lungs. Oxygen from the lungs is entering into blood circulation, and CO2 from the blood circulation is entering into the lungs. So here there is exchange of gases. O2 is coming here and CO2 is going there. And now within this blood, now this oxygen rich blood is coming here. Now oxygen is coming into the body parts and CO2 is released into the blood. Now here also there is exchange of gases. So in this way exchange of gases is taking place here. So here we are focusing on breathing process, exchange of gases here, exchange of gases here. Not only this, how exactly it is transported from the lungs to the body parts and from the body parts to the lungs. This part also we will study. So breathing we will study, transport of gases also we will study, and exchange of gases also we will study. These are the things we will study. Anyhow, maybe in the next lecture or so, we will study about the steps. In NCERT they gave sequential stepwise things. Everything we will study sequentially, so don't worry. And not only this, once they are taken into the cells, inside the cells what happens? Cellular respiration will occur. Cellular respiration will occur. That means in that cellular respiration you are talking about glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport, all the things. But anyhow, this cellular respiration inside the cell, how exactly oxygen is utilized and how exactly CO2 is produced, that particular part we are not studying here. That particular part you are studying under plant physiology. There is a heading called as respiration in higher plants. And please remember, even though that chapter was given in that particular plant physiology, many students are thinking that glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport occur only in the plants. They are thinking like this. They are thinking that these processes occur only in the plants. That is wrong. They are occurring even in the case of animals also. The same content is applicable even to human also. Why to study two times? That's why they have not given here. Directly they have mentioned there. So please observe that content carefully. Okay. So in this way, overall, this breathing in general it is called respiration. So in this respiration, generally we are talking about external respiration, external respiration, external respiration, and then internal respiration, internal respiration, and then cellular respiration. Cellular respiration. In simple, external means this particular part you can consider. So from the atmosphere to the lungs, from the lungs to the atmosphere, you can consider as external respiration. Internal respiration means from the lungs to the tissues. To the tissues, oxygen is separated, and from the tissues to the lungs, CO2 is given back. And this particular thing you can consider as internal respiration. And within the cells, that glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, all these things you can consider as cellular respiration. So in this way also you can talk about this, but in the NCERT they have not given this much of clearly. So that's why we are not worried that much. But please remember, under the cellular respiration, we are talking about glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain. These are the some basic and most important things that we need to understand. Clear? And I hope now we understood why exactly we are taking oxygen inside and why we are releasing CO2 outside. Clear? The conclusion once again I am giving you. So during the electron transport chain or electron transport system, oxygen is utilized, and that oxygen is taken from the atmosphere first into the lungs, then it is going into the blood. Through the blood it is supplied to the tissues, cells or tissues. Okay, now, and within those cells during the Krebs cycle, CO2 is released. That CO2 from the cells, it is going into the blood circulation. From the blood circulation, ultimately it reaches lungs, and again it is released outside. And this is what happening. So in this way, in the breathing and exchange of gases, our focus is how this oxygen is taken inside and how it will be utilized and how it is transported. How it is utilized means cellular respiration will come, that you will study under electron transport chain. So what we will study, how oxygen is taken inside and how the exchange of gas is occurring, how it is transported to the tissues, that's it. And then what we will study, how oxygen is utilized, CO2 produced, that we will not study in this chapter, that you will study in respiration. And this produced CO2, how it is transported to the lungs, that we will study. And from the lungs, how this CO2 is released outside the body, that we will study. So these steps we will study in this particular breathing and exchange of gases chapter. I hope now you got the basic idea what we will study here. These are the things. If we study all these things, with this chapter will be completed. Clear? Now, so now we need to read that NCERT first paragraph. There itself they are saying that, so if you are keeping your hand on your chest, so during this breathing what happens? It is raising up and it is going back. Yes or no? It is raising up and also it is going down. So why this movement is taking place? Explanation I will give in the next coming lectures when we study about mechanism of breathing. Under the mechanism of breathing I will tell you. So in this way, so you can understand that, so we are doing this breathing. So by simply observing the movement of this chest movement, so we can understand that. So when inspiration is taking place, we are taking inside air, and when expiration means release of the air. So these things we can easily observe. Please remember, not only the chest, even the abdomen is also moving. Please observe this one. Anyhow, under the mechanism of breathing, I will tell you all these particular details. And this is just introductory lecture. So here we will study some basic information. That's it. Okay. So in this way, how exactly this breathing is occurring, what exactly happening, all the things slowly we will study in this particular one. And before going with the next paragraph, first we will study about the first paragraph of NCERT. Please remember, this is the glycolysis process. In this glycolysis process, NADH plus H plus is produced. Again, it is used in electron transport chain. In the electron transport chain, again oxygen is used. Please remember this. Next, this is the Krebs cycle. So Krebs cycle, from pyruvate to the acetyl coenzyme A, this is the link reaction, acetyl coenzyme A, now it is involving here, and this is the Krebs cycle. Now if you are clearly observing here, in the Krebs cycle CO2 is released. In the Krebs cycle CO2 is released. The CO2 that we are releasing from our body, actually it is produced in Krebs cycle. So please remember these things. Okay, at least in your syllabus you are studying this, so you need to understand this. So in the Krebs cycle CO2 is produced, and that CO2 should be released outside the body. Okay, this is what. Next one, electron transport chain. In the Krebs cycle, if you are observing, see here, NADH is produced, here FADH2 is produced, NADH is produced, NADH produced. Here also, in the case of this particular process also NADH is produced. In the glycolysis also NADH is produced. Here in this link reaction also we are studying about the NADH production. Krebs cycle also we are studying NADH production. In a Krebs cycle, along with NADH, FADH2 production also we are talking. And what happens to this? NADH, it is having some electrons, it is giving electrons to this. They are moving in a sequential process. And FADH2, here complex 2 will be there, FADH2. And this FADH2 is also giving its electrons in this complex. So in this way, these electrons are moving in this particular complex. And ultimately, if you see here, off O2 plus 2H plus, and here ultimately it is forming H2. Understood or not? So in this way, they have given this. So this is the step where exactly the oxygen is used. Understood or not? At this step, this oxygen is used. So this, for this particular step, oxygen is required, and that oxygen we are taking from the atmosphere. Understood or not? Anyhow, ultimately after this, H plus are again going back through F0, F1 particle, and here ATP production is occurring here. So in this way electron transport chain is occurring. So in these three, glycolysis and also link reaction, Krebs cycle and electron transport system. All these things you will study under respiration in plants, and this is also called as cellular respiration. But the cellular respiration, since already you are studying there, we will not study here. And remaining all steps, yes, definitely we will study each and everything with logic, everything we will study in this particular chapter. Clear? First, quickly let us go through the first paragraph. As you have read earlier, oxygen is utilized by the organisms to indirectly break down the simple molecules like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, etc. to derive energy to perform various activities. See here, to perform various activities, we need energy. From where we are getting this energy? By the breakdown of some simple molecules like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids. They can undergo these steps. Different processes are there. Here we are studying generally with respect to glucose. But these amino acids, fatty acids, they can also be linked with this process and they can also give the energy. So in this way we are getting this energy. But what they are saying here, in this particular process, oxygen is utilized by the organisms. So organisms require the oxygen. This is what they are saying. Okay, that's why we need to take the oxygen inside. Next one. Carbon dioxide, which is harmful, is released during the above catabolic reactions, catabolic breakdown reactions. So during the breakdown of these substances, energy is produced. Fine. But at the same time, CO2 is also produced, and CO2 in a particular concentration, it is okay for us. But if more and more CO2 is produced, that is harmful to the cells. So excess CO2 should be compulsorily removed. Please remember, not completely the CO2 is removed. Definitely some small amount of CO2 is present in our body also, but excess CO2, it should be compulsorily removed. So that's why here oxygen is required and here CO2 should be removed. So that's why these two are combined. That means these two steps are combined so that the system, the organism has developed a mechanism for this particular one, and in simple we are calling this particular one as respiratory system. So this is what we are studying here. Okay, next one. So it is therefore evident that oxygen has to be continuously provided to the cells. So that is the reason why oxygen should be continuously provided, and CO2 produced by the cells have to be released out. So cells are also continuously producing CO2. So oxygen should be continuously supplied and CO2 should be continuously removed out. So that's why these two steps should be occurring continuously. And this process of exchange of oxygen from the atmosphere with CO2 produced by the cells is called as breathing. So in simple, what is this breathing? Oxygen from the atmosphere is taken into the cells and CO2 from the cells is released into the atmosphere. So this is in simple the breathing process. This is what happening in the breathing process, and commonly it is called as respiration. Breathing is also called as respiration. Okay, next one. Place your hands on your chest and you can feel the chest moving up and down. Yes. So if the organism is living, then what happens? Breathing is compulsory. And when we are doing this breathing, chest is moving up and down, up and down. So in this way, so if it is up, whether it is inspiration or expiration, those things slowly we will understand. Okay. So in this way, we can understand that this is moving up and down during this breathing process. And you know that it is due to the breathing. So because of the breathing, this chest is moving up and down. Next one. How do we breathe? How exactly we are doing this breathing? Slowly we will study the mechanism. So don't worry. Next one. The respiratory organs and the mechanism of breathing are described in the following sections of this chapter. Slowly we will study what are the various respiratory organs in various organisms. Please remember, our main focus is human only. Even though we are focusing on the human, what they did in our syllabus is, so in one paragraph, they gave some generalized idea about all the animals. So if you are talking about the animal kingdom, so many phyla are present, but all the animals are not same. Yes or no? So if you're talking about the animal kingdom, we are talking about so many phyla. So some are called as invertebrates, some are called as vertebrates. Likewise also we have classified. Yes or no? So in this way, starting from this sponges up to the mammals, if you see, slowly the organization is becoming complex. When the organization of the organism is becoming complex, so definitely some different mechanisms are developed here. So that's why what we are saying is, majority of the mechanisms we are studying in the human, majority of these are not present in the lower animals. You can find them in higher animals. So in this way, a comparative account they have given here. Some examples they give. Please remember, for every phylum you don't need to worry about this, but at least whatever the NCERT examples they give, that list you need to make it. What is the organism? What is the type of particular organ or the system that is responsible for a particular process. Likewise, in the entire human physiology, for every chapter they have given some of these examples like this. Suppose here we are talking about the breathing. So respiratory organs. So in various organisms, what are the various respiratory organs? Likewise, one comparative account also they have given. Please remember, at least whatever the NCERT examples are there, those are compulsory. But anyhow, in the animal kingdom separately we are studying all these things, so we don't need to worry about this. But still, here simply I will give you name of organism and what is the type of respiratory organ. That's it. Clear? Now let us see. So in this way, we will study about various respiratory organs in various organisms just for names purpose. But more details we will study with respect to human. That's what the meaning is. And also mechanism of breathing. So how exactly in the case of human this breathing process is taking place, that also we will study in the next coming sections very slowly. Now here first we will study about the comparative account. In different organisms, what are the organs that are responsible for this exchange of gases? That means simply for the respiration, for the breathing process. What are the respiratory organs? That we will see here. First let us focus about the human. Human means human belongs to the class Mammalia. That means we are mammals. So in the case of mammals, what are present? Lungs are present. Yes or no? So anyhow, lungs are present, structure, how exactly it is present, how exactly breathing occurs, everything we will study with respect to human, no problem. But for others, simply the names we are studying. You don't need internal mechanisms. Please understand this. Clear? Now let us see. Mammals like human. So all the mammals are having lungs. At least you can understand with the example of human. So we are having the lungs. So if respiration is occurring through the lungs, that means for the breathing process, for the respiration process, if lungs are present, that type of respiration is called as pulmonary respiration. If lungs are involved in respiration, it is called as pulmonary respiration. And here, this pulmonary respiration, we are not just observing only in the mammals. You can see this pulmonary respiration in amphibians, reptiles, birds and mammals, in all these four. In all these four you can see. But you are going little bit lower to this fishes. In the case of fishes, even though they are also vertebrates, please remember here all these are amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, they are also vertebrates, but these are generally what? Terrestrial. Most of these are terrestrial, even though some of them are living in the water also. So mostly they are terrestrial. So in those cases, lungs we are observing. But here we are talking about some aquatic organisms examples. Okay. In that specifically, if you are focusing on the fishes, even though they are vertebrates, in the case of fishes, lungs are not present, and instead of the lungs, what are present here? Gills are present. And you can see the gills even in the aquatic arthropods and even in the case of aquatic mollusks. In the case of aquatic arthropods, in the case of mollusks. So even in these also, actually these two are invertebrates, and even in those also we are observing gills. So now what is the term that is important? If respiration is occurring through the gills, that is called as a bronchial respiration. Please don't get confused. If lungs are involved, pulmonary respiration. If gills are involved, bronchial respiration. This is one important. Next one is regarding the insect. This is the very important, because after completion of human physiology, we will study about the cockroach. Cockroach is an example for the insect. So this insect means you can simply think about the cockroach. So in the case of insects, what is present? Network of the tubes, tracheal tubes. These are called as a tracheal tubes. Anyhow, when we study about the cockroach, there we will, at least I will show you the diagram, because in the NCERT they have not given the complete details. So there I will show you the diagram and everything. Okay. So some network of tubes are present. They are called as a tracheal tubes. So that's why it is called as tracheal tubes. Respiration through tracheal tubes. Please remember these names. If you are going a little bit lesser to this one, earthworms means phylum Annelida. So in the case of earthworms, so here there are no separate respiratory organs. there are no separate respiratory organs. Outermost cuticle, and that cuticle itself is moist. So what is the advantage of this moist cuticle? So with the help of this moist cuticle, what happens is oxygen will be dissolved within that moisture. Whatever the moisture means, what water is there on the cuticle, small amount of water is present, oxygen will be dissolved in that, and then immediately it will be diffused. So that means in the case of these earthworms, there are no separate respiratory organs. Directly across the moist cuticle, exchange of gas is occurring. That means from the atmosphere, oxygen will be dissolved in that moist cuticle, and from there it will be diffusing into the body. And inside the body, CO2 is produced, that is coming to this moist cuticle, and from there it is going into the atmosphere. This is what. So this is what. So that means from the higher to the lower, if you are talking, if you are going to the lower, respiratory organs may not be separately present. Please observe carefully. And in the case of sponges, coelentrates, and even in the case of flatworms also, here what happens? Through the mechanism of simple diffusion over the body surface, exchange of gas is directly taking place. Directly, the exchange of gas is occurring across the body surface. This is what the most important point you need to observe carefully here. Suppose this is the organism, suppose. Directly exchange of gases. CO2 is released and from the atmosphere oxygen is taken inside. So this is the surface of the body. So directly at the surface of the body itself, exchange of gases is taking place. That means there are no separate respiratory organs. So you just talk about the human. For the human, so can directly the exchange of gases occur on the skin? It will not occur. So oxygen should go into the lungs. From there it should go into the blood, and then it is supplied to the tissues. From the tissues, CO2 will come into the blood. From there it will reach the lungs, and from the lungs it is going out into the atmosphere. This is what. So this is what the thing that you need to observe. So in this way, in the lower organisms, separate respiratory organs are not present. So in the case of evolution, if you are talking, so in the evolution what happens? These are the first formed organisms, and slowly in the evolution they are formed like this. So in the evolution progression, what happens? There are some specialized structures that are developed in the different organisms. Understood or not? This is what the overall idea regarding this particular examples. Clear? And here please remember here, now there is another sentence given in NCERT regarding amphibian. In the case of amphibian, we are taking an example of the frog. And now please remember, anyhow in our syllabus, cockroach is there, frog is there. So now observe carefully. Insect means cockroach. You just take the example. In the case of cockroach, network of tubes called tracheal tubes are present for respiration. So 1 point from cockroach is completed. And now regarding the frog, anyhow frog is also there in our syllabus. Now we will see. In the case of frog, what we are saying? In the case of frog, since it is amphibian, anyhow lungs are present, lungs are compulsory. So here lungs are present. So lungs are involving in the exchange of gas and everything, that is good. So lungs are compulsory. Pulmonary respiration. Pulmonary respiration means lungs are involved. Good. Not only lungs. In the case of frog, even though lungs are important, there you will study more details separately on the frog. Not only lungs. There are some other locations. What are these? Skin. Skin. So skin is moist. In the case of frog also, skin is moist. So through this moist skin, directly exchange of gases is taking place. So cutaneous. If the skin is directly involving in the respiration, it is cutaneous respiration. So in the case of frog, lungs are also working and moist skin is also involving in exchange of gases. So these 2 points completed. And not only this, buccopharyngeal. Buccal means what? Oral, or buccal means what? It is the mouth. Yes or no? So buccal is the mouth, and this is the pharynx, and this is the buccal cavity, and this is the pharynx. And surrounding this particular buccal cavity and the pharynx, in the case of frog, not in the case of human. So there is a moist skin that is present here. And there also directly within this mouth and the pharynx, there across that moist skin also, there also exchange of gas is taking place. So please observe carefully. So buccopharyngeal respiration. So within the buccal and pharyngeal cavity, there also exchange of gas is taking place, and the lungs are also involved. So pulmonary respiration is occurring, and the moist skin is also involving in exchange of gases. So cutaneous respiration. So in the case of frog, you can see all the 3 types of respiration. This is another most important point that we need to remember. And now let us quickly go through this particular paragraph. Mechanisms of breathing vary among different groups of animals depending mainly on their habitats and levels of organization. So, in different animals, different types of respiratory organs are present. And who will decide these habitats? Whether they are present on the land or whether they are present in the water. So, in this way, based on this also, respiratory organs are slightly different. And also level of organization. If you are talking about the lower animals, level of organization is very less. If you are talking about the higher animals, levels of organization is very high. So, in this way, based on levels of organization also, different types of respiratory organs were developed. Next one, lower invertebrates like sponges, coelentrates and flatworms, etc. exchange oxygen with CO2 by simple diffusion over their entire body surface. So, in these organisms, across the body surface, exchange of gases is taking place. Earthworms use their moist cuticle. So, in the case of earthworm, across the moist cuticle, this exchange of gas is taking place. Insects have a network of tubes called tracheal tubes to transport the atmospheric air within the body. So, they are taking the atmospheric air into the body and directly it is taken to the tissues. Please remember here, there is a small difference in the tracheal system and our pulmonary system. In the case of our pulmonary system, atmospheric air is not directly going into the tissues. First it is going into the lungs. From the lungs it is going into the blood and now blood will carry the oxygen to tissues. That is happening in the case of pulmonary respiration where we are talking about lungs. But if you are talking about the tracheal tubes, in the cockroach I will tell you very clearly. So in the case of tracheal tubes, what happens? Atmospheric air through the tracheal tubes directly it will go to the tissues. Please observe carefully. Directly it is going to the tissues. So that means in the case of cockroach, even the fluid called hemolymph is present, that is not carrying the oxygen. Please observe carefully. In the case of human, blood is very important for carrying oxygen. But in the case of cockroach, the fluid or blood you can say, but technically it is called hemolymph, that is not involving in transport of gases because these tracheal tubes are directly branched. They are very long and highly branched and they are having branches in such a way that they are going to each and every tissue directly. So, at the tissue itself exchange of gases will occur. So, there I will tell you about this point once again. So, please keep this point in mind, very important for examination. Next one, special vascularized structures. Whenever they are saying the term called vascularized, vascularized meaning is blood supply is present. Blood supply is present. So special vascularized structures called gills. That means what? Gills are having blood supply. Anyhow, regarding this particular point, gills, blood supply, all these names in the body fluids and circulation, because in the body fluids and circulation we will study about 2-chambered heart, 3-chambered heart, 4-chambered heart, likewise we will study. So in the case of fishes, we will study 2-chambered heart. And there what happens? From the heart, the blood is going to the gills, 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 the same name. So there you will understand more details. Okay. So in this way, these gills are again supplied with the blood. So that's why they are vascularized structures. So if gills are involved, it is called as branchial respiration. So in this way, special vascularized structures called gills are used by most of the aquatic arthropods, mollusks, whereas vascularized bags called as lungs, so are used by the terrestrial forms for the exchange of gases. If gills are used, bronchial respiration. If lungs are used, it is a pulmonary respiration. So mostly terrestrial forms are using the lungs and aquatic forms are using the gills in the case of little bit higher organisms. Next one. Among the vertebrates, fishes use gills. Fishes are using gills, whereas amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, and they are respiring through lungs. So these individual, already I told all these points in the table. So please observe this. Next one, separately for the frog, they are saying amphibians like frog can respire through their moist skin also. Also means what? Already under the amphibians, we studied lungs. That means in the case of frog, lungs are also working. Not only lungs, it can also respire through moist skin. That's why cutaneous respiration. That's why in the case of frog, pulmonary respiration is there, cutaneous respiration is also there. Not only this, even though they have not mentioned here regarding the frog separately in the structural organization animals, they have mentioned that. So in the case of frog, buccopharyngeal respiration is also taking place. So all the three, All the three types of respiration is taking place in the case of a frog, which is an amphibian. This is what the paragraph and its meaning. So please remember each and every word and its meaning. Clear? And now we are going with the human respiratory system. But here what I will do is simply I will tell you the names. That's it. Simply I will tell you the names itself. And in the next lecture I will tell you each and everything with complete explanation. So here, since this is just introductory lecture, simply I will tell you what are the various names that we are using here. So in the case of human respiratory system, if you want to talk about human respiratory system, first we are starting with the nose with the openings to the outside. Single nose having two openings to the outside, and these two openings are called as nostrils. Nostrils they are called as, and they are also called as external nares. And these nostrils they are opening into the nasal chamber. These nostrils are opening into the nasal chamber through a nasal passage. So through the nasal passage, now it is opening into the nasal chamber. And for this nasal chamber also, on the inner side again openings are there. They are called as internal nares, and they are opening into this pharynx. Yes or no? So in this way, anyhow, in the even though digestion and absorption chapter is deleted, I told you to go through those two videos, right? So please go through those two videos. And there itself we have already discussed about the pharynx. Pharynx is divided into three parts: nasopharynx towards the nose, oropharynx towards the mouth, and hypopharynx. It is also called as laryngopharynx. Yes or no? This is what. And this is the common part for, please remember, hypopharynx or the laryngopharynx is the common part for both respiratory system and digestive system. This is what we are saying. And this is having opening. In that lecture itself, I already told you very clearly that laryngopharynx is having two openings, right? So one is into the windpipe, other is into the food pipe. Opening into the windpipe is called as glottis. Opening into the food pipe is called as gullet. Already I told all these names. But anyhow, these names once again very clearly, once again I will explain you in the next lecture, because this is just a basic idea. That's why I don't want to go into more details. In this way, this pharynx into the windpipe it should open, and the initial part of this windpipe is this larynx. It is also called a sound box, and then it is opening into a long trachea, and this trachea is passing up to the middle of the thoracic cavity. Please remember this upper part is called a thoracic cavity, and this lower part is called as abdominal cavity. Names are very important. And this is passing through the neck. Which one? Trachea. Trachea is passing through the neck and also going up to middle of this thoracic cavity. And anyhow, more details I will give you in the next lecture. So here, if you're talking about the vertebra, cervical vertebra, thoracic vertebra, and then lumbar, sacral, coccyx. So these are the different vertebra, and the names of vertebra, don't worry, we will study in the separate chapter called as locomotion and movement. So here what they are saying, at the level of fifth thoracic vertebra, now this trachea is undergoing the branching. It is branched into right and left pulmonary bronchi. Please remember, when you are observing, for you this side is right side, this side is left side, but whenever we are talking about the human systems, it is with respect to me. So this is right side, this is left side. It is divided into right and left pulmonary bronchi. In this way, primary bronchi. In this way, right and left primary bronchi. And this primary bronchi will further divide into secondary bronchi. Again, they will further divide into tertiary bronchi. And again, with this, bronchi division is over. Next, bronchioles will start. After the tertiary, what happens? Initial bronchioles, terminal bronchioles, likewise they are divided. And after this terminal bronchioles, finally what happens? Alveolar ducts and alveoli will be present. This is the complete sequence. But anyhow, for this, so with the diagram and everything, I will tell you, this is what the NCERT diagram is. Okay. So this is the trachea. This is the right primary bronchus. This is the left primary bronchus. Again, they are subdivided into secondary bronchus, tertiary bronchus. Again, further divided into initial bronchioles, terminal bronchioles. Likewise, I am using only the NCERT names. Please understand this. I am using only the NCERT names. So in this way, finally, they are opening into this alveolar duct and then into a small bag-like structure. That bag-like structure is called as alveolus. In this way. Okay. So in this way, from this entire bronchial tree, this you can consider as a lung. This is left side lung and this is the right side lung. So in this way, we are talking about this lungs. This is what the human respiratory system in simple. Okay. This is the human respiratory system sequence in simple. Clear? Anyhow, more details we will study in the next lecture. The same thing in the form of sentences they gave here. Simply I will read it. But once again, we will do more details in the next lecture again. We have a pair of external nostrils. So two external nostrils are present, opening out above the upper lips. Just above the upper lips, these two openings are present. It leads to a nasal chamber through the nasal passage. So through the nasal passage it is opening into, through the nasal passage it is opening into nasal chamber. This is what they are saying. Please remember, in the NCERT they have given only these sentences. So anyhow I will cover this. In the next lecture I will give proper explanation for better understanding. Okay. Next one. The nasal chamber opens into the pharynx. So this nasal chamber is opening into pharynx, and pharynx, next one, a portion of which means a portion of pharynx. Which pharynx? Hypopharynx, laryngopharynx. Yes or no? So that is common passage for both food and air. Yes sir. Next one. The pharynx opens through the larynx region into the trachea. So after the pharynx, larynx, that is opening into the trachea. Okay. Next one. Larynx is also called as, is a cartilaginous box which helps in the sound production. That's why it is called as sound box. Larynx is called as sound box. Next one. During swallowing, glottis can be covered by a thin elastic cartilaginous flap called epiglottis to prevent the entry of food into the larynx. The same sentence already I told you, I have explained you even in the digestion and absorption chapter also. So please go through that. Even though that chapter is deleted, that is very important. So please go through those two videos at least those two videos. Anyhow, this proper explanation I will give you in the next lecture. Okay, next one. Trachea is a straight tube extending to the mid-thoracic cavity, middle of the thoracic cavity it is coming, and which divides at the level of fifth thoracic vertebrae. So here, from here to this particular part, these are the thoracic vertebrae. And how many are present? 12 thoracic vertebrae are there. So at the level of fifth thoracic vertebrae, here, now it is undergoing the branching. In this way, with respect to thoracic vertebrae, they are comparing, and at that level it is undergoing branching. In this way, they are comparatively, they are telling this. Okay. At the level of fifth thoracic vertebrae, it is divided into right and left pulmonary bronchi, or the primary bronchi. Each bronchi undergoes repeated divisions to form secondary and tertiary bronchi, and then finally into the bronchioles, ending up with terminal bronchioles. Finally, they are called as terminal bronchioles. Next one. So here also we are observing some C-shaped cartilaginous rings are also present, and these are the final sac-like structures called alveoli. I will give proper explanation in the next lecture. Simply, I am giving you some basic idea. That's it. The branching network of alveoli and the bronchioles and the alveoli and all these are comprising the lungs. So what will come under the lungs? Branching network of bronchi, that means primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, and bronchioles means initial bronchioles, terminal bronchioles, and finally alveolar ducts and alveoli are present. All these is called as lungs. So in this way, two lungs are present. Okay. So this is what they are saying, bronchioles. The trachea, primary, secondary and tertiary bronchi and initial bronchioles are supported by incomplete cartilaginous rings. Role, how exactly they are present, where they are present, everything we will see in the next lecture. Next one, each terminal bronchiole gives rise to a number of thin, irregular walled, vascularized. One side they are using the word called vascularized, means what? Blood supply is present. Bag-like structures called as alveoli. Finally, they are ending with the alveoli. Why I am telling about these things? Because at least you will know the names. Just for the names purpose, I am telling all these things. In the next lecture, I will give proper explanation. Okay. The branching network of bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli comprise the lungs. So this is what the thing is. So in this way, what are the various names? At least the names purpose only I am telling you. What are the names that we are studying? So nostrils are external nares, nasal passage, nasal chamber, pharynx, larynx or sound box, and then trachea, and then primary bronchi. Yes or no? And then secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi. Initial bronchioles name was not used here, but in a separate paragraph they used. So please remember initial bronchioles and then terminal bronchioles. And finally it is the alveoli. These are the various names they used in this particular part, and they also talked about C-shaped cartilaginous rings also they are talking. So these are the various names they have used under this respiratory system. So in the next lecture we will go with a proper explanation of our complete respiratory system. Clear? So with this particular lecture is completed. We will meet in the next lecture. Thank you.